Emma Parker sat on her bed that quiet evening, trying to finish a page in her journal, when her bedroom door opened slowly and her father stepped inside with a calmness that felt too careful, almost like he was holding something fragile inside him. Emma's father was the type of man who rarely entered her room without knocking, and even though he always spoke gently, this moment felt different in a way she couldn't explain. She noticed the way he stood in the doorway, steady posture, soft eyes, hands slowly rubbing against each other as if preparing for a difficult conversation, and it immediately made her chest tighten with nervous curiosity. She expected something normal, something like asking about dinner, bills, errands, or her job at the local bookstore, but instead she saw a nervousness on his face that didn't belong to everyday life, something that suggested he had been thinking about this moment all afternoon. Emma put her journal aside, trying to push away the feeling of uncertainty growing inside her, and asked him if everything was okay. Her father didn't answer right away. He simply walked over and sat on the edge of her bed with a slow, thoughtful motion that made Emma's heart beat faster, because he only sat like that when he needed to talk about something serious, something he believed might change the way she saw things. His silence lasted only a few seconds, but to Emma it felt longer, stretched thin by the way his fingers trembled slightly, a small detail that unsettled her because her father never trembled. He finally spoke her name, Emma, in a soft voice that carried emotional weight, and the sound of it made her look at him more closely. She saw something behind his calm expression, a strange mixture of worry, kindness, and a deep, fatherly understanding that told her this conversation wasn't about chores or reminders. It was about her life, about something he had seen or felt that she didn't know about yet. She wondered if she had done something wrong or forgotten something important, but there was no frustration in his tone, only a quiet seriousness that made her stomach drops with confusion. When he finally said, "I need to ask you something important, but I don't know how you'll take it," Emma felt her pulse jump because her father was not a dramatic man. For him to say something like that meant the question mattered deeply to him. She tried to prepare herself, though she had no idea what she was preparing for. Her father looked down for a moment, as if gathering courage, and then met her eyes again with the gentlest expression she had seen from him in years, the kind of expression he used to give her mother before they lost her, full of quiet emotion and memory. That look alone made Emma's breath tighten, because it felt like he was about to say something personal, something connected to her heart and not her responsibilities. When he finally spoke the question, "Emma, are you in love with Noah?" her entire world seemed to stop at once. The journal she had been holding slipped from her hands and fell onto the floor with a soft thud that neither of them reacted to. Noah. The name felt like a sudden warmth and shock at the same time, a name she had tried to keep hidden inside her heart for years, locked away behind excuses and distance. Noah wasn't just a man from her past, he was the boy who grew up next door, the friend who made her summers brighter, the person she used to imagine a future with before life pulled them in different directions. Hearing her father say his name so calmly, so directly, felt like someone had opened a box she had sealed shut. Emma sat frozen, unable to form a single word, because she didn't even know how her father could have guessed something she never confessed aloud. Her father, still calm but watching her reaction closely, said nothing more, as if his role was only to ask the question and let the truth settle between them. Emma's mind raced through every moment she had seen Noah recently, his smile. Earlier that day when he dropped off a box of books, the softness in his voice when he asked how she'd been, the way her heart had reacted even though she'd tried to ignore it. She wondered if her father had noticed her expression, her voice, or something in her eyes she hadn't realized she was giving away. For a moment, she wanted to deny everything, to protect herself, to pretend those feelings were long gone, but she couldn't speak, not because of fear but because her father's question made her confront something she had been avoiding for too long. The room felt heavier now, filled with unsaid truths, and Emma could feel her heartbeat echoing through her whole body. Her father didn't push her or ask again, he simply waited with patient eyes full of quiet understanding, as if he knew this moment was something she needed. And as she sat there frozen, heart tangled between fear and hope, she realized that her father's question wasn't meant to expose her, it was meant to guide her. But she still wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. And the fact that he had asked at all left her completely frozen in place. Emma's mind spun after her father asked if she was in love with Noah, and though she had been frozen at first, she finally managed to whisper, "Dad, why would you ask me that?" But her father didn't answer immediately. Instead he looked at her with a soft, patient expression that made her feel both comforted and vulnerable at the same time, as if he understood her heart better than she did herself, and then he spoke. Slowly, almost like choosing each word carefully, "I saw the way you looked at him today, Emma, the way your voice changed when you said his name, and I recognized it because your mother looked at me the same way when we were young." And just mentioning her mother brought a mix of warmth and ache that spread through Emma, making her blink rapidly to hide the sudden tears forming in her eyes because memories of her mother always came with a sharp sense of longing, and the room felt heavy with unspoken emotions as she realized her father wasn't judging her. He was noticing something deeply personal and trying to guide her through it, and she felt a wave of confusion and embarrassment rush over her because she hadn't expected her father to notice such subtle feelings, yet here he was, acknowledging the truth she had hidden even from herself, and Emma shifted uncomfortably on her bed, looking away, trying to hide the rapid beating of her heart that Noah's name still caused, remembering the way he had smiled at her earlier when dropping off a box of books, a smile that had been so simple, kind, and familiar that it had melted years of distance she thought she had built, and her father leaned forward slightly, hands clasped, eyes never leaving hers, and said softly, "Emma, if you still care about him, you should know something." And that single line made her chest tighten even more because the tone in his voice suggested he knew more than he should, that he had some insight into Noah's feelings or intentions, and suddenly a part of her was scared, yet another part felt relief because she realized she wasn't alone in this, that her father wasn't judging or scolding her, he was just asking her to face the truth she had been running from, and the air in the room felt heavier as she tried to think of what to say, words caught in her throat, because admitting anything could make it all real. And just as she was about to ask him what he meant, a soft knock from downstairs startled both of them, pulling their attention to the hallway, and the timing made Emma's heart race because she wondered who it could be at this hour, while her father's calmness returned instantly, though his eyes flicked to her with a subtle look that said he was both protective and encouraging, and Emma's mind raced through possibilities, but before either of them could move, the knocking came again, louder this time, making the tension in the room rise as though someone outside was unknowingly part of the moment they shared, and she noticed her father's slight hesitation, a tiny flicker of worry crossing his face, something she rarely saw, and it made her realize that even in calmness, he carried responsibility and concern, that he wanted the moment to be private but life was intruding, as it always did, and Emma felt a strange mix of panic and anticipation. Her emotions tangled because the knock brought her fully into the present, reminding her that Noah might be near, or perhaps someone else entirely, and yet her thoughts immediately returned to him, the boy she had loved quietly for years, whose presence had lingered in her memories more vividly than she wanted to admit, and suddenly she understood why her father had approached her so carefully, why he had asked the question now, because he had noticed her feelings were real, undeniable, and that she needed guidance more than she needed silence, and she realized that what he was offering was not criticism, not interference, but a chance to confront her own heart with honesty, which made her pulse quicken with both excitement and fear, and in that moment, she noticed a small detail she hadn't before, her father's hands weren't perfectly still, and that tiny tremor suggested he, too, felt the weight of this truth, the emotional gravity of young love, the same way she did, and it made her heart soften toward him in gratitude and trust, understanding that he wasn't just asking a question, he was trying to protect her from regret, from missed opportunities, from the pain of denying her own emotions, and as the knocks continued faintly from downstairs, Emma swallowed hard, feeling her courage gather slowly, because she realized that whatever happened next, this conversation had changed the dynamic between them forever, that her father's calmness was not distance but preparation, and that the truth he was helping her see was more powerful than any denial she had held on to, and with a shaky breath, she whispered again, "Dad, what do you mean by something I should know?" And he looked at her with a mixture of tenderness and seriousness, pausing just long enough to make her heart hammer in anticipation, like standing on the edge of a cliff before a leap, and then he leaned slightly closer, a subtle, encouraging gesture, signaling that the next words would be important, that what he was about to reveal would intertwine her past, her present, and the possibility of her future, and Emma felt her stomach tighten with the mixture of fear and hope that comes when facing matters of the heart, and in that silence, with the distant knock still echoing faintly, she knew life was about to shift, that what she had avoided acknowledging for so long, the truth about Noah, her feelings, and perhaps even his feelings, was no longer something she could ignore, and as the air in the room seemed to pause, suspended between questions and answers, Emma realized her father's calmness was not a shield but a bridge, guiding her gently toward honesty and courage, and though she didn't yet know what lay ahead, the anticipation wrapped around her like a soft, electric charge, making every heartbeat feel sharper, every breath more precious, and she understood in that suspended moment that the story of her heart, her love, and her choices was just beginning, and that she was on the verge of a truth she could no longer run from, a truth that would change everything. Emma's heart raced as she hurried downstairs, still trying to process the question her father had asked, the weight of it pressing on her chest, and when she opened the front door, she froze because there was Noah standing there, his familiar dark jacket catching the evening light, his hands casually in his pockets, yet his eyes full of something Emma couldn't immediately name, something steady, sincere, and vulnerable all at once, and the sight of him made the world feel smaller, sharper, and impossibly charged with emotions she had buried deep inside her heart for years, emotions she thought she had outgrown but now surged back as if they had been waiting for this very moment. She felt her knees weaken slightly but forced herself to stand tall, taking a breath as Noah stepped closer, his voice soft yet deliberate when he said, "Emma, I needed to talk to you," and in that simple phrase, 1,000 memories flashed through her mind, summer afternoons they spent laughing together, the countless small moments of shared trust and joy, the quiet conversations at dusk, the way he had been the one constant friend in her life, and now, standing in front of her, he seemed both the same boy she had known and a man she could barely recognize, grown into someone she might truly love if she let herself. Emma noticed the slight hesitation in his movements, the careful way he measured his words, and she realized he was just as nervous as she felt, despite his calm exterior, which made her heart flutter even more because she remembered all the times she had worried about him, all the times she had wondered what he truly felt, and suddenly the earlier conversation with her father made sense. He had seen the way she reacted to Noah, the way her emotions betrayed her, and now Noah was here, giving her a chance to face it directly, to confront what both of them had been holding back for far too long, and her mind raced with anticipation and fear. The kind that comes when everything you've felt in secret is finally at the brink of being revealed, and she swallowed hard, unsure if she should speak first or let him continue, because every second felt electric, heavy with possibility and the unspoken promise of connection. Noah finally continued, his voice trembling slightly, betraying the calm he tried to project. "I was going to say this earlier, but I got scared. And I shouldn't have been," and Emma felt her heart lurch at his honesty, at the way he admitted fear yet still chose to confront her, because that vulnerability made her feel seen, understood, and unexpectedly safe despite the storm of emotions inside her, and she realized she had missed this, the real, raw connection they had always shared, the comfort and tension of being together even without words, the magnetic pull that had never truly left. Her breath caught as she asked softly, "Say what?" Because part of her wanted to hear him confess, to finally have clarity, and part of her was terrified that hearing the truth might shatter her carefully guarded heart if it didn't match her own feelings. But she could already feel her love for him stirring again, stronger than she expected, and when Noah spoke again, "I'm moving. Not far, but far enough that if I don't say this now, I'll hate myself later." Emma felt a sharp pang of fear, realizing that time was limited, that opportunity could slip away if she didn't act, and that the feelings she had tried to ignore were pressing her to respond honestly or risk regret for the rest of her life, and in that instant, she understood why her father had intervened. Why he had asked her to face her heart before it was too late, because everything depended on honesty, courage, and willingness to embrace vulnerability. She felt her chest tighten, tears threatening to fall, as Noah leaned slightly closer, not in a rush, not demanding, but simply standing in her presence, letting the silence stretch long enough for their emotions to settle and for Emma to feel the depth of what had always been between them, and then he whispered, "I still have feelings for you. Strong ones. Ones I never got over." and the words hit her like both warmth and lightning, sparking every hidden corner of her heart, awakening old memories, dreams, and desires she thought were long gone, and she felt a mix of relief, fear, and hope swirling inside her, making her hands shake slightly and her voice falter. Before she could respond, a sudden sound upstairs drew her attention, a ringtone from her father's phone, urgent and loud, breaking the moment and reminding her that life continued around this delicate pause in time. And her father's presence upstairs added another layer of complexity, as she realized he had not only observed but also guided them to this point, and the knowledge made her heart ache with gratitude for his understanding and patience, for his quiet role in helping her confront her feelings. And as she turned her gaze back to Noah, she could see the same emotions mirrored in his eyes, longing, hesitation, hope, and love, and she understood in that instant that their connection had never truly faded, that it had only been paused by fear, distance, and life itself, and now it was fully alive again, demanding attention, honesty, and courage, and Emma felt her pulse quicken, her breath uneven, because the choice she had to make was both exhilarating and terrifying, to embrace what she had always felt or to retreat into safety and distance. The air between them seemed to thicken with possibility, with the tension of emotions unspoken yet palpable, and Emma realized that everything she had been avoiding, the truth of her heart, the undeniable attraction, the history they shared, was now unavoidable, and she could either deny it and risk losing him forever or accept it and face whatever consequences might come. And as Noah stepped a fraction closer, giving her space yet closing the emotional gap, she felt the electricity of anticipation, the gentle pull of familiarity, and the undeniable reality of love that had been waiting for this moment. And even as her father's footsteps hinted at his return, she knew the choice, the truth, and the path forward would be theirs alone, delicate, precious, and charged with the deep, unspoken promise of a shared future. And in that suspended moment, Emma's heart knew that everything had changed forever. Emma's heart pounded as she faced Noah, the warmth of the evening sun casting a soft glow around them, and every thought she had suppressed for years now collided with the reality of his presence, making her breath catch and her mind race as she tried to organize the jumble of feelings swirling inside her, from longing and fear to hope and anticipation. And she realized that the question her father had asked earlier, the one that had frozen her in her room, was finally guiding her to this moment, because without it, she might have continued pretending that what she felt for Noah no longer mattered. But now, standing here, she could no longer ignore it, and she took a slow, steadying breath before whispering, "Noah, I thought I outgrew those feelings. I tried to," and in that confession, she felt both relief and vulnerability, knowing that admitting her truth made her fragile yet real. And Noah listened silently, his eyes never leaving hers, filled with the same mix of anticipation, nervousness, and hope that mirrored her own. And when he spoke, his voice gentle and trembling, she felt a shiver of recognition. The deep, magnetic pull of love that had been dormant for years now awakened fully, and she remembered all the small moments they had shared growing up, the unspoken bonds, the laughter, the trust, the quiet evenings on the porch, the walks they had taken together, memories that suddenly felt alive again, vivid and impossibly close, making her chest tighten with longing. And as she took another step toward him, a step tentative yet intentional, she felt the gravity of the emotions that had always connected them, emotions that were now undeniable, impossible to hide. And she finally admitted, "But when you smiled at me today, I felt everything all over again." And her voice, soft but steady, carried all the feelings she had bottled up, the love, the regret, the hope, and the fear of losing him. And Noah's expression softened, a mix of relief and emotion flashing across his face, the tension in his shoulders melting into something warm and real. And he closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in her words as if letting them settle into his very soul. And then he stepped a little closer, careful yet deliberate, as if closing the distance between them physically would somehow help him bridge the emotional gap they had endured for so long. And Emma felt her pulse quicken, the electricity of anticipation mixing with the soothing comfort of familiarity, as she realized that they were both ready to face what they had avoided for years, to embrace the truth they had ignored, to acknowledge that the feelings that had once scared them were still very much alive. And she remembered her father's words from earlier, the gentle encouragement hidden within his question, the wisdom in his calm, and the understanding that he had wanted her to face her heart without fear. And that realization made her smile softly, tears threatening to fall. Because her father's role had been quiet yet crucial, guiding them without intrusion, protecting her while letting her make her own choice, and as Noah whispered, "I'm still here, Emma. I've never stopped feeling this." She felt a rush of emotion so strong it made her knees weak and her chest burn with the intensity of everything she had held inside, and in that moment, every memory of their shared past, every laugh, every glance, every small act of care, came rushing back to her, filling the space between them with a tangible, almost magical energy, and she realized that this was love, mature, honest, and enduring, not the fleeting crushes of youth, but something deeper. Something that had survived distance, fear, and time, and she let herself feel it fully, embracing the nervous flutter, the hope, and the thrill of finally being seen and understood by someone she had cared for her entire life. And then Noah asked softly, almost as if seeking permission, "So, what do we do now?" And her heart skipped, her mind racing through possibilities, through the fear of heartbreak and the desire for happiness, and she realized that the answer lay within her own courage. Within the honesty she had finally allowed herself to express, and she smiled through the emotions, a genuine, steady smile, saying, "We try. We take it one step at a time. And we don't run anymore." And in those words was both commitment and vulnerability, a promise to face whatever came together, and as they stood there, the soft evening breeze wrapping around them, the world seemed to pause, giving them this private moment, this chance to rebuild, to begin again, to heal old wounds, and she felt the relief and warmth of finally letting go of the fear that had kept her from acknowledging the depth of her feelings. And at that instant, footsteps from upstairs reminded her of her father returning, yet instead of tension, she felt gratitude, knowing that he had quietly guided her to this moment, that he was proud, relieved, and at peace seeing her embrace love honestly. And as Emma looked back at Noah, their eyes met, and without words, they understood each other perfectly, the shared history, the present emotions, and the bright possibility of a future together, and she felt her heart finally steady, no longer frozen by fear or hesitation, because she had faced the truth, embraced it, and chosen to step into it fully, hand in hand with someone who had never stopped caring. And in that quiet, tender, emotionally charged moment, she realized that what her father had asked weeks ago, what had initially left her frozen, had actually been the catalyst she needed to confront her heart, to embrace love without apology, and to finally understand that vulnerability could lead to strength, that honesty could lead to connection, and that sometimes the most difficult questions lead to the most beautiful answers. And with a deep breath, Emma felt a sense of peace, joy, and excitement, knowing that she and Noah were beginning something real, heartfelt, and lasting, together, guided by truth, courage, and the quiet wisdom of those who love us most.